The Assembly will come back to order. We'll go to order of business 8, motions, resolutions, and notices.
Assembly Joint Resolution Number 8, introduced by Assemblyman De Silva and Brittany Miller, urging the Congress of the United States to deschedule marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance.
Assemblywoman Howdegi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Joint Resolution Number 8 be referred to your Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections.
Without objection, so referred. Order of business 9, introduction, first reading, and reference of bills.
Assembly Bill 433, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to business requiring the Secretary of State to waive the fee for a state business license and for certain business entities for the first year of operation, standardizing the amount of the fee charged to business entities to obtain or renew a state business license, eliminating certain fees relating to the registration of a registered agent, revising the amount of the fee certain business entities are required to pay to amend certain information on a list filed with the Secretary of State, increasing the amount of the penalty certain business entities are required to pay for failing to make certain filings or pay certain fees on or before the date on which those filings or fees are due, increasing the amount of fee required for certain business entities to make various filings with the Secretary of State, increasing the amount of the fee a person must pay to obtain an authentication issued by the Secretary of State for certain information, increasing the amount of the maximum reasonable fee the Secretary of State may charge for certain special services, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 434, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to prescription drugs, prohibiting a pharmacy benefit manager or health carrier from taking certain actions against entities that participate in a federal program to facilitate the discounted purchase of prescription drugs, prohibiting a program administered by the Department of Health and Human Services to provide therapeutics to persons with human immunodeficiency virus from taking similar actions, imposing certain limitations on the use of money available to administer the program to provide therapeutics to persons with human immunodeficiency virus, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 435, introduced by the Committee on Health and Human Services, an act relating to behavioral health, authorizing the administration of a program to award grants to promote the establishment of programs that provide integrated treatment for co-occurring disorders, imposing requirements governing certain contracts for the provision of behavioral health services, providing for the establishment of metrics and incentives relating to the quality of behavioral health care, providing for the collection and use of information concerning the capacity to deliver certain behavioral health services to persons under 21 years of age in the state, authorizing certain administrative penalties, requiring Medicaid to cover certain behavioral health services and provide an enhanced rate of reimbursement for certain behavioral health services, requiring the compilation and submission of a report governing the implementation of certain provisions of this bill, providing for the study of certain rates of reimbursement under Medicaid, requiring the development of a plan to expand certain data collection, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 436, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to financial services, requiring a person who provides earned wage access services to register with the Commissioner of Financial Institutions, imposing certain requirements on such registrants, providing for the regulation by the Commissioner of Earned Wage Access Providers, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 437, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to providers of health care, limiting the amount a provider of health care may charge to fill out certain forms necessary to take a leave of absence authorized by the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 438, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to title insurance, prohibiting a title insurer, title agent, escrow officer, and certain persons who hold licenses or registrations issued by the Real Estate Division of the Department of Business and Industry from engaging in certain conduct, providing civil penalties, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 439, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to insurance, providing that no provision for arbitration in a contract for insurance is binding upon the named insured or any other person who makes a claim under the contract, repealing certain provisions related to provisions for arbitration in a contract for insurance, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 440, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to insurance, imposing certain requirements concerning the income generated by a pharmacy benefit manager, imposing a fiduciary duty upon a pharmacy benefit manager towards certain third parties, prohibiting a pharmacy benefit manager from engaging in certain activities or implementing certain policies or practices, requiring a pharmacy benefit manager to submit to certain audits, imposing certain fees upon a pharmacy benefit manager, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 441, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to industrial insurance, revising certain requirements to make certain insurance records available for inspection, removing the requirement that certain entities maintain a telephone service to accept collect calls from injured employees, revising the circumstances under which the administrator of the Division of Industrial Relations of the Department of Business and Industry is authorized to remove a physician or chiropractic physician from a list or panel of physicians and chiropractic physicians who may provide certain medical services relating to the Nevada Industrial Insurance Act, requiring the administrator to publish annual and quarterly reports authorizing certain physicians and chiropractic physicians to decline to perform certain evaluations under certain circumstances, authorizing certain injured employees to request certain additional examinations, revising requirements for calculating the value of certain payments pursuant to the Act for a permanent partial disability, revising provisions relating to an appeal of certain determinations of the administrator, requiring certain insurance claims to be administered by certain persons, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Assembly Bill 442, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to medical professions, requiring the Board of Medical Examiners to notify an appropriate law enforcement agency of a complaint alleging that a physician, perfusionist, physician assistant, or practitioner of respiratory care has committed any act constituting a felony, requiring the Board to summarily suspend, pending a formal hearing, the license of a physician, perfusionist, physician assistant, or practitioner of respiratory care who is alleged to have committed any act constituting a felony which is the same as or substantially similar to an act alleged in an earlier complaint against the licensee, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Assembly Bill 443, introduced by the Committee on Commerce and Labor, an act relating to higher education, authorizing the use of a Governor Gwent Millennium Scholarship for a course of study at an institution for which the completion of a clinical program located in this state is required, and providing other matters properly in thereto. Assembly Bill 444, introduced by Assemblywoman Backus, an act relating to child welfare, establishing various provisions governing proceedings relating to the custody, adoption, or protection of Indian children, or the termination of parental rights, requiring the Division of Child and Family Services of the Department of Health and Human Services to adopt various regulations, requiring an agency which provides child welfare services to provide certain training for its personnel, requiring the Division and the Court Administrator to submit certain reports to the chairs of the Senate and Assembly Standing Committees on Judiciary, authorizing the Supreme Court and the Court Administrator to adopt certain rules repealing certain unnecessary provisions, and providing other matters properly thereto. Assembly Bill 445, introduced by Assemblywoman Newby, an act relating to mental health, authorizing the Office of Economic Development to grant a partial abatement of property taxes, business taxes, and sales and use taxes to a business that locates or expands in the state and that provides mental health services for children, establishing a credit against the modified business tax on certain businesses for taxpayers who donate money to the account to improve mental health services for children, clarifying that facilities providing mental health services for children are eligible for loans and financial assistance from the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank, creating the account to improve mental health services for children to provide supplemental rates or enhanced rates of reimbursement to a recipient of Medicaid who is a child for mental health services, and providing other matters properly in there too. Assembly Bill 446, introduced by Assemblywoman Cohen, an act relating to guardianship, revising various provisions relating to the guardianship of a minor, and providing other matters properly in there too. Assembly Bill 447, introduced by Assemblywoman Anderson, an act relating to property, authorizing a landlord to enter into an agreement with a person for the processing of payments or collection of rent, establishing certain requirements for a person who processes payments for or collects rent pursuant to such an agreement, and providing other matters properly in there too. Assembly Bill 448, introduced by Assemblyman Yeager, an act relating to taxation, revising the exemption from the real property transfer tax applicable to certain transfers of real property between business entities, and providing other matters properly in there too. Assembly Bill 449, introduced by Assemblyman Gallant, all Senators Buck and Hanson, an act relating to taxation, authorizing a taxpayer to obtain a credit against property taxes owed by the taxpayer under certain circumstances when an applicable partial abatement of taxes was not applied or claimed, and providing other matters properly in there too.
Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 433 through 449 be assigned to the committees as listed on the Assembly Bill Introductions list dated March 27, 2023. All members have a copy of this list on their desk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Assembly Bill 450, introduced by Assemblywoman Considine, enacting to taxation, revising the exemption from the real property transfer tax applicable to certain transfers of real property between business entities and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 450 be referred to your Committee on Revenue.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 451, introduced by the Committee on Government Affairs, an act relating to state employees, providing that an employee in the unclassified service of the Budget Division of the Office of Finance is entitled to compensation for overtime under certain circumstances and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
One minute recess.
1 minute recess. The Assembly will come back to order. Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 451 be referred to your Committee on Ways and Means.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 452, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to offenders, requiring the Director of the Department of Corrections to adopt regulations establishing and governing a program for the visitation of offenders, requiring the Department to establish a panel to review certain decisions of a warden or manager to deny visitation, requiring a warden or manager who denies visitation to provide certain written notice regarding the denial, and providing other matters properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 452 be referred to your Committee on Judiciary.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 453, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to adoption, authorizing an agency which provides child welfare services or a licensed child placing agency to consent to certain adoptions, revising provisions governing certain financial assistance provided to the adoptive parents of a person with special needs, and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 453 be referred to your Committee on Judiciary.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 454, introduced by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to criminal defense, revising provisions relating to the payment of compensation and expenses for certain attorneys who provide certain legal services to indigent defendants under certain circumstances, requiring the Board on Indigent Defense Services to adopt certain regulations relating to rates of compensation for certain attorneys who provide certain legal services to indigent defendants under certain circumstances, and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 454 be referred to your Committee on Judiciary.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 455, introduced by the Committee on Revenue, an act relating to tobacco, authorizing the Department of Taxation to impose a civil penalty for certain violations relating to contraband tobacco products, and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 455 be referred to your Committee on Revenue.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 456, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, an act relating to railroads, prohibiting the operation in the state of certain trains that are more than 7,500 feet long on certain railroad tracks, establishing provisions governing the duty hours of yardmasters, requiring a local authority or the Department of Transportation to install traffic control devices and automated traffic enforcement systems at certain railroad grade crossings, providing civil penalties, establishing provisions governing the issuance of a civil infraction citation based on evidence detected by an automated traffic enforcement system, and providing other matters properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 456 be referred to your Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 457, introduced by the Committee on Growth and Infrastructure, an act relating to license plates, removing the requirement for the Department of Motor Vehicles to automatically reissue certain license plates every 8 years, and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 457 be referred to your Committee on Growth and Infrastructure.
Without objection, so referred.
Assembly Bill 458, introduced by the Committee on Ways and Means, an act relating to education, authorizing a temporary advance from the Education Stabilization Account to the State Education Fund under certain circumstances, and providing other measures properly thereto.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Assembly Bill 458 be referred to your Committee on Ways and Means.
Without objection, so referred.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we stand in recess.
Assemblywoman Howdiggy has moved that the Assembly stand in recess to the call of the chair. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. We are in recess.
Members, please do not go far. Please stay in your seats.
The Assembly will come back to order. We'll go to Order Business 15. Assemblywoman Howdegi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some announcements for the floor. Today was Conservation Lobby Day at the Legislature. Tomorrow we are celebrating Carpenters Assistance Resource Program, so make sure you stop by and visit them. We also have College of Southern Nevada Day at the Legislature, Comprehensive Cancer Centers of Nevada Legislative Day at the Legislature, and Health Equity Advocacy Day. Mr. Speaker, seeing no other business in front of us, I move that we stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 29th at the hour of 11:30 a.m.
Assemblywoman Howdegi has moved that the Assembly stand adjourned until Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, at the hour of 11:30 a.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? We are adjourned.